Welcome to the first lesson of the year. We're going to talk about a couple of things first before we get started. First of all, just so that you know, the length of these videos will be between 10 and 20 minutes typically. Occasionally they'll be a little under and occasionally they'll be a little over. So just be aware of that sometimes it'll be longer. So 10 to 20 minutes, the videos themselves probably will take you 30 to 45 minutes to go through. Okay, there are parts where I will tell you specifically pause the video to so that you can work a practice problem. I will also, you do have to write down the examples and you have to write down the practice problem. So you may pause, you may go back, you may rewind. That's one of the beauties of this. If I say something that you didn't hear or didn't understand, you can go back and listen to it again. So that's part of what the videos are. Super important, materials needed, a pencil, a notebook, and a calculator. I don't have graphing calculator written on there yet, but you will need one, okay? There will be lessons later this week that will specifically say graphing calculator. Please make sure that you get one. The other thing, the notebook. I'll talk about this in the first few videos, probably the whole first unit, at least until we have the first notebook quiz, so you kind of have a feel for it. But you need to make sure you're using the same notebook for your notes and your assignments and your practice problems, and that you're writing everything down that's required of you. All the examples and all the practice problems have a possibility of being in the notebook quiz. So please make sure that you're using the same notebook, that has your name on it, that it has a date on it, and it has statistics written on it. If you do not have a notebook with a cover that says that, you will not be allowed to take the notebook quiz, and that will result in a 0. So please make sure that you have that information. So this video is going to run a little long, so I want to make sure that we get started and get going. So conceptual knowledge, we're going to start with conceptual. Conceptual does not have to be written down. Okay. Most of the time conceptual is 1 or 2 slides. We talk about what's going to be in the examples, and that's it. This conceptual is very, very long. So just bear with me. Again, you don't have to write any of this down until we get to example 1. So conceptually, first of all, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about data and how we organize data. So the first unit is primarily on organizing data and doing small statistical analysis of that data. So when we have a raw set of data, it's really hard to see what's going on. So you have to be able to organize the data into charts and things like that. There's lots of different charts that you can use. We're going to talk specifically about a frequency distribution, which consists of classes and frequencies. Okay, so let's look at what these are conceptually. So I have this sort of in the wrong order. I should have probably switched this a little bit, but let's just talk about frequency distribution is what we're going to be focusing on. Frequency distribution is the organization of raw data in table form using classes and frequencies. Okay, frequency distribution is the point of this lesson today. Longest part about frequency distribution is how to find your classes. If you look at these, there's steps here. There's 4 steps, right, to creating a group frequency distribution. The longest one is determining the class. Okay, step number 1. All right. So this one is a little bit difficult. After you have the classes figured out, the rest of it's easy. So example 1, when we do 2, we're going to have 2 examples today. Example 1 is only on determining classes. So and then you notice the rest of the steps are easy. So let's go through what kind of when we're determining classes, what are we looking for? So first of all, this is what a frequency distribution looks like. You'll notice that there's 2 different things. There's class limits, class boundaries. Okay, these are 2 different things. Class limits, very important. They're saying what numbers are we going from. So if we have a set of data that goes from 24 to 65, and we're going to group the data that goes from 24 to 30 in one set, 31 to 37 in another, and so forth. Very important that these are not inclusive. Okay, if this says 30, that one has to say 31. They can't both say 30. Okay, because then where would you put the data? So these ones are exclusive data. You cannot include the same number in 2 different classes. So that's super important. Then we have something called class boundaries. Okay, that's saying if the data is continuous, meaning that it goes on forever, like there is no in between, because there's a gap between 30 and 31. How can we represent that? This one it's really easy. It's kind of bizarre, but it's easy to figure out. This one, you'll notice, we're going to subtract 0.5 from the lowest number, so it becomes 23.5, and we're going to add 0.5 to the highest number. Then it gets easy after that. This has to be continuous. So where this is exclusive, this is inclusive. So class limits are exclusive, class boundaries are inclusive, meaning that whatever we end with, we start with the next one. The reason we do that is because there'll be no data points that are 0.5. We're just trying to be inclusive with everything. So 23 to 30.5 to 30.5, and the next one starts with 30.5. And we add 0.5 to the next one all the way down to the very end. So this is the beginning of a frequency distribution. Then we tally up how many times it occurs in each one, write down the number, and then we do cumulative frequency. This is the other one that's just a little bit different. Okay, we're just going to add up all the frequencies as we go. So this number, if we total, should be the same as the cumulative frequencies here. So 3 is the first one, 3 plus 1 is 4, 4 plus 5 is 9, 9 plus 9 is 18, and so forth. Alright, so that's what a distribution looks like. Alright, this is about finding boundaries. We talked about that already a little bit. Okay, so rules. Rules for determining classes. Remember, finding classes is the hardest part. So the very first one is there should be between 5 and 20 classes. Alright, usually it's given to you. It's saying this is how many classes you should have, but if you have to figure it out on your own, somewhere between 5 and 20. Okay? If you're not given how many you have, find one. Try to make it an odd number. Okay? The class width an odd number. It'll make it easier. Okay, they must be mutually exclusive. We talked about that. Okay, you can't go from 10 to 20 and 20 to 30, because then where does the number 20 go? You must go 10 to 20 and then 21. You can't. You must go 10 to 20 and then 21 to 31. Okay, that's super important. Okay, the classes must be continuous, so you cannot have 10 to 20 and then 30 to 40. Okay, they must have, you have to, even if there's no numbers in here, you have a frequency of 0. In this set right here, you must have a set in between. The classes must be exhaustive. Okay, so you cannot have, if your data runs from 2 to 43, you can't have your last class be from 30 to 40, because then you're missing the last set of data. It must include everything. Okay, they must be an equal width. All right, now this is where it gets tricky. We'll talk about width in just a moment. But this has, okay, you would say that this is a width of 10. It's actually a width of 11. Okay, but each one of them has a width of 11. And we'll talk about how that is found in a moment, but they're all exactly the same. So the only time you can have differences is if you have an open-ended frequency, which is fine. It really, they show up. You don't have to have them. This is saying everything above 54. This is everything below 110. You can have those in certain situations. So. All right, so here's an example. Now, everything prior to this did not have to be written down. This must be written down. This could show up on a notebook quiz. So everything from here on out, you must write down. So this one just gives us a class, and it asks us to find the class boundaries, the midpoints, and the widths for each class. So first of all, let's do the easy ones first. We're going to do boundaries and midpoints. Okay, so we do the boundaries. Remember with the boundaries, that's an add and a minus 0.5. So what's 12 minus 0.5? It's 11.5. And 18 plus 0.5 is 18.5. So we're going to go from 11.5 to 18.5. That's our boundaries. This is our class limit. This is our boundary. Okay? All right, so then let's look at midpoint. Midpoint is super easy. It's like the mean, okay, or the middle. Sometimes you can find it without, or the median, or whatever you want to call them. You can find it without actually doing the work, but if your data is like this, 12 to 18, it's easier to do it with the formula. So the formula says I'm going to add my two ends together, and I'm going to divide by 2. So this becomes 30 divided by 2. My midpoint is 15. Okay. This becomes important when we start graphing frequency distribution. So you have to be able to find a midpoint. All right, now the width. So my first instinct, and most participants' instinct, will say, well, the width is 18 minus 12, which is 6. That's not exactly true. So let's add up. Let's see what this is. If we count 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Oops, we just went to 18, yeah? And let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this has a width of 7, not 6. So if you're subtracting, and the reason is because it includes those two numbers on the end. When you subtract, it excludes one of those numbers. So if you're subtracting to find the width, always add 1. Okay? Likewise, if you're given a width, you need to subtract 1 if you're doing it this way to get the number. So our width is 7. All right. So that's example 1. Now we're going to go to practice 1. Practice 1 is a problem you will do on your own. Okay? You pause the video at this point and you do the problem. But before you pause, let me talk about a couple of things. You'll notice in this case, this is a little bit different than the example. Okay? I'm not going to spoon feed you all the information. Okay? Part of being in school is being able to take the information you already know, extrapolate the knowledge, and apply it to something else. So sometimes the practice problems will be harder than the actual examples that you have. Not always, but sometimes. In this case, it is a little bit different, right? It didn't just give you a class and say find this information. Okay? This said, it gave you the information and it said find the classes using 7 classes. And there is some stuff that I haven't gone over in detail yet, which we will do in the next example, but I kind of wanted to give you a chance to challenge yourself a little bit to find this. So if you're having trouble with it, you can always move forward, look at the solution, and then move back and try it once you've gotten a feel for some part of the solution. So at this point, if you're comfortable, pause the video, try the problem, and then go to the solution. Here's a solution. Here's another opportunity for you to pause, okay, and go through the solution. Now, one thing, when I do a notebook quiz and I ask you for a practice problem, I'm looking for it in your own words, in your own work. The solution will always have lots of explanation in it that does not have to be written down. Okay? If you did the practice problem and you showed the work and you got an answer, that is acceptable. So, in fact, if this is what you try to write down, I'm going to say you didn't do it. Okay, because it's just writing down all the explanation. I'm looking for work, but I'm not looking for explanation. All right, example 2. So we're now going to actually create a frequency distribution. It says the heights in inches of commonly grown herbs are shown. Organize the data into a frequency distribution with 6 classes and think of a way in which these results would be useful. So the very first thing we need to do is we need to determine the class. This is the hardest part. So I'm going to say, all right, what is my range? So my smallest number is 7 and my biggest number is 36. So 36 minus 7 is 29. That is my range. I'm going to divide that by however many classes I have. In this case, they asked for 6. I'm going to divide that by 6. And I end up with 4.8. Now, you must always round up. It doesn't matter if it's 4.1, 4.2, whatever. Always round up to a whole number to get your class. Because otherwise you'll end up leaving numbers out and you don't want to do that. So my class width is 5. So if I start with 7, okay, and I add 5, I'm actually going to end up with 12, but that is one too many. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 is actually a width of 6, and I don't want a width of 6. So I need to subtract 1 from that to find my width. So 5 minus 1 is 4. So we're going to go 7 to 11, 12 to 16, right? 17 to 21, 22 to 26, 4 classes, 27 to 31, and then 32 to 36. So this is my 5 classes. And I did this, I subtracted 1 from my width to be able to subtract and get the numbers easier that way. If you want to just count, if I said, okay, my class is going to be 5, and 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, that's 5 numbers, I can write them down that way too. So this is my class limits. So that's the first part about my frequency distribution. Now I'm going to go boundaries. Remember, subtract 0.5. So we're going to go from 6.5 to 11.5. And then it's just continuous. 11.5 to 16.5, 16.5 to 21.5, 21.5 to 26.5, 26.5 to 31.5, and 31.5 to 36.5. Okay, very simple. All right, so limits, boundaries, tally. Let's tally up what we have, and I'll use a different color. That's right. All right, so I'm going to draw some lines here so that I don't put the tally mark in the wrong spot. So 18 follows here, 20, 18, 18, 24, 10, 15, 12, 20, 36, 14, 20, 18, 24, 18, 16, 16, 20, and 7. That's my tally mark. So now let's look at what's my frequency. I just add up my tallies. 2, 5, 9, 2, 0, and 1. And then my cumulative frequencies, can add them up. 2 plus 5 is 7, 7 plus 9 is 16, 16 plus 2 is 18, 18 plus 0 is 18, 18 plus 1 is 19. And now we have made a frequency chart. Okay, moving on to your last one. We have a practice problem, okay? So this is your practice problem. Pause the video, do it on your own, and then check the solution. Here's your solution, and please check your answers. I can move this so we actually have it right. And I will see you tomorrow. We'll work on this assignment that has to do with the second part.